My husband served me divorce papers at breakfast. You failed to provide a family. The divorce papers stared back at me, mocking my 15 years of marriage. I couldn't believe Jacob had the audacity to serve them to me over breakfast, as if he were asking me to pass the salt. Is this some kind of sick joke? I asked, my voice trembling. Jacob's eyes darted nervously around our kitchen. Emily, I'm sorry. It's time. Time for what? I slammed my hand on the table, causing the china to rattle. Time for Jacob to throw away everything we've built. He flinched, avoiding my gaze. You wouldn't understand. It's complicated. Oh, I understand perfectly, I spat. Your mother finally got what she wanted, didn't she? As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Jacob's shoulders tensed. That'll be her now. I gritted my teeth as Olivia, my soon-to-be ex-mother-in-law, swept into our home like she owned the place. Her eyes gleamed with triumph as she spotted the papers on the table. Emily dear, she cooed, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I see Jacob's finally come to his senses. I stood, squaring my shoulders. Olivia, this is between Jacob and me. You have no place here. She laughed, a brittle sound that set my teeth on edge. Oh, but I do, you see, Emily. Family is everything, and you? Well, you failed to provide one, haven't you? Her words hit me like a physical blow. I'd always known Olivia resented my inability to have children, but to hear it thrown in my face so callously. That's enough, mother, Jacob said, his voice uncharacteristically firm. Olivia's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly recovered. I'm only stating facts, dear. It's high time Jacob found someone who can give him the family he deserves. I felt my world crumbling around me. Was this really happening? Was I losing everything because I couldn't have a child? Get out, I whispered, my hands shaking. What was that, dear? Olivia asked, cupping her ear mockingly. I said get out, I shouted, my voice echoing through the kitchen. Olivia's face twisted with anger. How dare you speak to me like that in my son's home? It's still my home, I retorted, and I want you out now. Jacob stepped between us, his face pale. Mother, please, just go. We'll talk later. With a huff, Olivia stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned to Jacob, tears stinging my eyes. Is this really what you want? He hesitated, then nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Emily. It's for the best. Numbly, I picked up the divorce papers. As I flipped through them, a small note fluttered to the floor. Frowning, I bent to retrieve it. In Jacob's familiar scrawl, it read, Emily, don't trust anyone. Call the police. Look deeper. My head snapped up, but Jacob was already heading for the door. I'll be staying at my brother's for a while, he said, not meeting my eyes. Take care, Emily. As the door closed behind him, I stared at the cryptic message, my mind reeling. What was going on? Why would Jacob serve me divorce papers, then leave this mysterious note? I sank into a chair, clutching the paper like a lifeline. My marriage might be over, but something told me this was just the beginning of a much bigger story, and whether I liked it or not, I was right in the middle of it. I never thought I'd find solace in the very family that tore mine apart, but life has a way of surprising you. 2 weeks after Jacob left, I found myself standing on the doorstep of Olivia and William's sprawling mansion, my heart pounding. You're late, Olivia snapped as she opened the door, her eyes narrowing. Emma's been waiting. I bit back her retort. I'm right on time, actually. Olivia waved her hand dismissively. Whatever. Emma's in the library. Try not to upset her. She's delicate. As I made my way through the opulent house, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment. This was the life Jacob had grown up in, the life I could never provide. I found Emma curled up in an oversized armchair, her nose buried in a book. She looked up as I entered, her eyes wide. Hi, Emma, I said softly. I'm your Aunt Emily. I'll be looking after you for a while. She nodded, her gaze dropping back to her book. Okay. I settled into a nearby chair, trying to ignore the awkward silence. What are you reading, Emma? She hesitated, then held up the book. Harry Potter. Have you read it? I smiled. I love those books. Who's your favorite character? For the first time, I saw a spark of interest in her eyes. Yuna love her good, she said. She's different, but she doesn't care what anyone thinks. That's a great choice, I said. Sometimes it's hard to be different, but it's also what makes us special. Emma's lips quirked into a small smile. Yeah, I guess so. As the days passed, Emma began to open up more. We spent hours reading together, discussing our favorite characters and imagining magical adventures. It was a welcome distraction from the chaos of my own life. One afternoon, as we were working on a puzzle, Emma suddenly asked, "Aunt Emily, why don't you and Uncle Jacob have any kids?" The question caught me off guard. Well, sometimes it's just not possible for some people to have children. Emma frowned. Is that why Grandma Olivia doesn't like you? I felt a surge of anger at Olivia's influence. Sweetie, adults can be complicated. Your grandma and I just don't see eye to eye on some things. Like Mom and Dad. Emma's voice was small. My heart ached for her. Your parents love you very much, Emma. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that have nothing to do with their children. Emma nodded, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. On impulse, I pulled her into a hug. To my surprise, she clung to me tightly. I wish you were my mom, she whispered. In that moment, I knew I'd do anything to protect this child. Later that evening, as I was preparing to leave, I overheard William and Olivia arguing in the study. We can't keep her here much longer, William hissed. Ava's lawyer is getting too close. Calm down, Olivia snapped. Once we finalize the offshore accounts, it won't matter. Emma's trust fund will be ours, and Ava won't see a penny. I felt my blood run cold. Were they planning to steal Emma's inheritance? As I crept away, my mind racing, I bumped into a side table. A framed photo crashed to the floor. Who's there? William called out. Heart pounding, I hurried to the front door. As I reached for the handle, it swung open, revealing Jacob. We stared at each other in shock for a moment. I saw a flicker of the man I'd married in his eyes. Emily, he breathed. What are you doing here? Before I could answer, Olivia's voice rang out behind me. Jacob, is that you? I pushed past him, fleeing into the night. As I drove home, Jacob's cryptic note burned in my mind. Look deeper, he'd said. Now I knew why. Something sinister was happening in this family, and Emma was caught in the middle. Whatever game Jacob was playing, I was now a part of it, and I was determined to win, for Emma's sake. The idea hit me like a bolt of lightning. I could save Emma from this toxic environment. I could give her the loving home she deserved. With trembling hands, I dialed my lawyer's number. Emily, adopting your niece is a complicated process, she warned after I explained the situation, especially given your current marital status. I pushed aside the twinge of pain her words caused. I don't care how difficult it is. Emma needs me. The next day, I arrived at Olivia and William's house with a renewed sense of purpose. As soon as I walked in, I knew something was wrong. The air was thick with tension. There you are, Olivia snapped, her eyes blazing. How dare you? I blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me. William emerged from his study, his face twisted with anger. Don't play innocent. We know about your little plan to adopt Emma. My heart sank. How had they found out? I don't know what you're talking about, I lied. Buying time. Olivia laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Oh, please. Your lawyer called to set up a meeting. Did you really think we wouldn't find out? I straightened my spine, refusing to be intimidated. Emma deserves better than this. She needs a stable, loving home. And you think you can provide that? William sneered, a childless woman who couldn't even keep her own marriage together. His words cut deep, but I stood my ground. I love Emma. That's more than I can say for either of you. Olivia's eyes narrowed dangerously. Love? You don't know the first thing about family, Emily. You couldn't even give Jacob children. What makes you think you're fit to raise Emma? I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation and anger. My worth isn't determined by my ability to have children, and neither is my capacity to love. William stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. Listen carefully, Emily. You will drop this ridiculous adoption idea. You will continue to work here as Emma's caretaker, nothing more. If you don't, we'll make sure you never see her again. Understood? I opened my mouth to argue, But a small voice interrupted us. "Stop it," Emma cried, appearing at the top of the stairs. "Just stop fighting." We all froze, the weight of our actions crashing down on us. Emma's eyes were filled with tears as she ran back to her room, slamming the door behind her. Olivia recovered first, her voice sickly sweet. "Now look what you've done, Emily. You've upset the poor child." I ignored her, pushing past them to follow Emma. I found her curled up on her bed, sobbing quietly. "Emma, honey," I said softly, sitting beside her. "I'm so sorry you had to hear that." She looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy. "Why does everyone always fight? Why can't we just be a normal family?" My heart broke for her. "Oh, sweetheart, sometimes adults forget what's really important. But I promise you, I'm going to do everything I can to make things better." Emma threw her arms around me, burying her face in my shoulder. "I wish you could adopt me," she whispered. "I don't want to stay here anymore." I held her tightly, my resolve strengthening. "I'm not giving up, Emma, no matter what your grandparents say." As I comforted Emma, my mind raced. I needed help, someone who could stand up to Olivia and William. And then it hit me. Jacob. Despite everything, he was still Emma's uncle. If I could get him on my side, we might have a chance. Later that night, as I left the house, I saw a familiar figure lurking in the shadows. Jacob stepped into the light, his face etched with concern. "Emily," he said urgently, "we need to talk. It's about Emma." I hesitated, torn between my anger at him and my desperation to help Emma. Finally, I nodded. "All right, Jacob. Talk." Jacob's words hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of secrets and betrayal. We stood in the shadows of a nearby park, the streetlights casting an eerie glow on his troubled face. "Emily, I know you must hate me right now," he began, his voice low and urgent. "But everything I've done, the divorce papers, the distance, it was all to protect you and Emma." I felt a surge of anger. Protect us by tearing our family apart? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every movement. "My family is corrupt, Emily, more than you could ever imagine. The business, the wealth, it's all built on lies and illegal activities." My mind reeled. "What are you talking about?" "Money laundering, fraud, even worse things," Jacob said, his voice breaking. "I've been gathering evidence for months, working with the FBI to bring them down. But I needed to keep you safe, keep you out of it." I stared at him, my emotions a whirlwind of relief, anger, and confusion. "Why didn't you tell me? We could have faced this together." "I couldn't risk it," he pleaded. "If they suspected you knew anything, you'd be in danger. And now, with Emma in the middle of it all." The mention of Emma snapped me back to reality. "Jacob, they're planning something with her trust fund. We have to do something." He nodded grimly. "I know. That's why I need your help now. We're close to having enough evidence, but we need more, something concrete to tie Olivia and William directly to the illegal activities." I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "What do you need me to do?" "Keep working as Emma's caretaker," he said. "But I need you to be our eyes and ears inside the house. Look for documents, overhear conversations, anything that could help build the case." The enormity of what he was asking hit me. "Jacob, if they catch me." "I know it's dangerous," he said, taking my hands in his. "But it's the only way to save Emma and bring them to justice." I pulled away, the hurt and betrayal still fresh. "How can I trust you after everything?" Jacob's eyes filled with pain. "Emily, I love you. I always have. Everything I've done has been to protect our family, the family we always wanted." His words struck a chord deep within me. Despite everything, I knew he was telling the truth. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll do it for Emma." The next day, I returned to Olivia and William's house with a new sense of purpose. As I helped Emma with her homework, my eyes and ears were alert for any clues. It was late afternoon when I hit the Jacopot. Olivia and William were arguing in the study, their voices carrying through the partially open door. "We need to move the money now," William hissed. "The feds are getting too close." Olivia's voice was sharp. "And what about Emma's trust fund? We can't touch that without raising suspicions." "Leave that to me," William said. "I've got a plan to make it look like Ava mismanaged the funds." Once we've got control, we'll funnel it through the offshore accounts. My heart raced. This was exactly what Jacob needed. But as I leaned closer to hear more, the floorboard beneath me creaked. The voices inside the study fell silent. "Did you hear that?" Olivia asked suspiciously. Panic seized me as I heard footsteps approaching the door. In a split second, I made a decision that would change everything. I scooped up Emma's textbook and knocked loudly on the study door. "Sorry to interrupt," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. "But Emma has a question about her history assignment. Could one of you help?" The door swung open, revealing William's scowling face. "Can't you handle it yourself?" he snapped. I met his gaze, forcing a smile. "Of course. I just thought you might want to be involved in Emma's education." My mistake. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of papers scattered across William's desk, papers that could be the key to unraveling their whole operation. I knew then that I had to find a way to get those documents. The stakes had just gotten higher, and I was in deeper than ever before. But for Emma's sake, for Jacob, and for justice, I was ready to risk it all. My heart pounded as I slipped into William's study, the house eerily quiet in the early morning hours. Jacob's words echoed in my mind. "We need those documents, Emily. It's our only chance to save Emma and bring them down." I rifled through the papers on William's desk, my hands shaking. Nothing. Where could they be? A floorboard creaked outside, and I froze. Footsteps approached. Panic rising, I dove behind the heavy curtains just as the door opened. "I'm telling you, Olivia, someone's been snooping," William's voice growled. "We need to move everything now." "Don't be paranoid," Olivia snapped. "No one suspects a thing. Besides, we can't rush this. One wrong move, and we lose everything." I held my breath, praying they wouldn't notice the slight bulge in the curtains. My leg cramped, but I didn't dare move. "Fine," William sighed, "but I'm moving the most incriminating documents to the safe. No one but us knows the combination." The safe, of course. My eyes darted to the painting on the wall. It had to be behind there. After what felt like hours, they finally left. I waited a few more agonizing minutes before emerging, my legs wobbly from standing still for so long. I approached the painting, my heart in my throat. How was I going to crack a safe? Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Jacob. "Emma's trust fund meeting today. Be careful." I cursed under my breath. I'd forgotten about the meeting. If I didn't show up, they'd get suspicious. But I was so close. Reluctantly, I left the study, vowing to return later. The meeting was tense, with William and Olivia exchanging pointed glances throughout. I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting to the safe and its contents. "Emily," Olivia's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. "Did you hear what I said?" I blinked, forcing a smile. "I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?" Olivia's eyes narrowed. I said, "We've decided to move Emma to a boarding school for her own good." "Of course," I gasped, genuine shock overriding my act. "You can't do that." William leaned forward, his voice dangerously low. "We can, and we will unless, of course, you have any objections." The threat was clear. I bit my tongue, seething inside. "No," I managed. "No objections." As soon as the meeting ended, I rushed to find Emma. She was in her room, tears streaming down her face. "Aunt Emily, I don't want to go," she sobbed, throwing herself into my arms. I held her tight, my resolve strengthening. "Listen to me, Emma. I promise I won't let them send you away. Do you trust me?" She nodded, sniffling. "I trust you." That night, I waited until the house was silent before sneaking back to the study. The safe loomed before me, mocking my inability to crack it. Suddenly, an idea struck. Emma's birthday. Could it be that simple? With trembling fingers, I input the numbers. 07,510. The safe clicked open. Triumph surged through me as I grabbed the documents inside. But as I turned to leave, a voice froze me in my tracks. Well, what do we have here?" Olivia stood in the doorway, her face a mask of cold fury. Behind her, William appeared, his eyes glinting dangerously. "I knew you couldn't be trusted," Olivia hissed. "William, call the police. We have a thief in our midst." My mind raced. I could see my chance to save Emma slipping away. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I bolted for the window, clutching the documents to my chest. As I crashed through the glass, I heard Olivia's enraged scream and William's pounding footsteps landing hard on the lawn. I scrambled to my feet and ran into the night. I had the evidence now, but at what cost? I was a fugitive, separated from Emma, with nowhere to turn but Jacob. As I ran, one thought consumed me. I had to finish this for Emma's sake, no matter what it took. My heart raced as I stood outside Olivia and William's mansion, the stolen documents clutched tightly to my chest. Jacob stood beside me, his face grim. "Are you sure about this, Emily?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. I nodded, steeling myself. "We have to end this now, for Emma." We approached the front door, and I rang the bell with a trembling finger. Moments later, Olivia answered, her eyes widening in shock. "You," she hissed. "How dare you show your face here after what you've done?" I pushed past her. Jacob closed the door behind us. "Where's William?" I demanded. "We need to talk, all of us." Olivia's face contorted with rage. "William," she screamed. "They're here." William appeared from his study, his face thunderous. "You've got some nerve coming back here," he growled. I held up the documents. "We know everything. The money laundering, the fraud, the plans for Emma's trust fund. It's over." Olivia laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You think those papers prove anything? We'll deny it all. It's our word against yours." "Not quite," Jacob interjected, pulling out his phone. "I've been recording every conversation, every meeting for months. The FBI has it all." The color drained from William's face. "You're bluffing," he whispered, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Suddenly, Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide with confusion. "Aunt Emily, Uncle Jacob, what's going on?" Olivia lunged for her, grabbing her arm. "Nothing, dear. These people were just leaving." "Let her go," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Emma, come here. It's going to be okay." Emma hesitated, looking between us. The tension in the room was palpable. "Don't listen to her, Emma," William said, his voice sickly sweet. "Remember who's taking care of you all this time." I felt a surge of anger. "Taking care of her? You've been stealing from her, using her as a pawn in your sick games." Emma's eyes filled with tears. Is that true?" Before anyone could respond, the sound of sirens filled the air. Jacob nodded grimly. "That'll be the FBI. It's over." "William, Olivia, give it up," Jacob said. William's face twisted with rage. In a flash, he grabbed a letter opener from his desk, lunging towards Jacob. "No," I screamed, throwing myself between them. I felt a sharp pain in my side as the letter opener found its mark. The room erupted into chaos. Emma screamed. Jacob tackled William. Olivia stood frozen in shock as I collapsed to the floor, my vision blurring. I saw FBI agents burst through the door. Emma's tear-stained face appeared above me. "Aunt Emily," she sobbed, "please don't leave me." I reached up, touching her cheek. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart, I promise." The next few moments were a blur of activity. Paramedics rushed in. Olivia and William were handcuffed. Jacob held my hand, his face etched with worry, as they loaded me into the ambulance. I caught a glimpse of Emma standing alone amidst the chaos. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew that no matter what happened, I had to survive for her. The ambulance doors closed, and darkness began to creep in at the edges of my vision. I could hear Jacob's voice, distant and frantic, begging me to hold on. My last thought before losing consciousness was of Emma. I had promised her I wouldn't leave, and I intended to keep that promise. But as the pain intensified and my grip on reality slipped, I wasn't sure if I would be able to. The world faded to black, and I found myself teetering on the edge of an abyss, fighting with every ounce of strength I had left for Emma, for Jacob, for the family we could still be. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room burned my eyes as I slowly regained consciousness. Jacob's worried face swam into view, his hand gripping mine tightly. "Emily," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're awake, thank God." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and raw. Jacob quickly offered me some water. Emma, I managed to croak out. Jacob's face softened. She's safe. Arvid is with her now. Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. Olivia and William, in custody. Yes, Jacob replied grimly. But there's more. The FBI uncovered a web of corruption that goes far beyond what we imagined. It's not just the family business. There are politicians, judges, even law enforcement involved. My head spun with the implications. What does this mean for Emma? Before Jacob could answer, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Raised voices and the sound of running feet filled the air. Suddenly, the door burst open. Ava stood there, her face pale with fear. They took her, she gasped. They took Emma. I bolted upright, ignoring the searing pain in my side. Who? What happened? I don't know, Ava sobbed. We were in the cafeteria, and then these men, they just grabbed her and ran. The security cameras were disabled. Jacob was already on his phone, barking orders to someone. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, determined to get up. Emily, you can't, Jacob protested. You're not strong enough. I fixed him with a steely gaze. Watch me. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Against medical advice, I checked myself out of the hospital. Jacob's twin brother, James, arrived, offering his resources and connections to help find Emma. We gathered at James's office, surrounded by computers and ringing phones. The FBI had set up a command center, coordinating the search efforts. We've got a lead, an agent announced. A car matching the description was spotted heading towards the docks. My heart raced. The family owned a yacht there. Could that be their escape plan? Without hesitation, I grabbed my coat. Let's go. Emily, please, Jacob tried to stop me. You're still recovering. Let the FBI handle this. I shook my head, my voice firm. I made a promise to Emma. I'm not breaking it now. We raced to the docks, sirens blaring as we approached. I saw a familiar figure hurrying a small struggling form onto a sleek yacht. William, I hissed, rage boiling inside me. Before anyone could stop me, I was out of the car, running towards the boat. I could hear Jacob shouting behind me, but I didn't slow down. I leaped onto the deck just as William was about to cast off. He whirled around, his eyes wild with desperation. It's over, William, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Let Emma go. He laughed maniacally. Over? It's never over. You have no idea how deep this goes, Emily. We'll disappear, start over somewhere else. Emma's coming with me. She's my insurance policy. No, she's not. A small voice piped up. Emma had wriggled free of William's grasp and was backing away from him. William lunged for her, but I was faster. I threw myself between them, feeling his fist connect with my jaw. Pain exploded through my head, but I held my ground. Suddenly, the boat rocked violently. Jacob and the FBI had boarded, their guns drawn. It's over, William, Jacob said, for real this time. As they handcuffed William, I sank to my knees, the adrenaline fading and the pain from my injuries returning full force. Emma threw her arms around me, sobbing. You came for me, she whispered. You kept your promise. I held her tight, my own tears falling. Always, sweetheart, always. As the world faded around me once again, I saw Jacob's worried face and felt Emma's small hand in mine. We had won, but at what cost? And what challenges still lay ahead for our unconventional family? The courtroom buzzed with tension as I took the stand, my eyes briefly meeting Jacob's supportive gaze. Olivia and William sat at the defense table, their faces masks of defiance and contempt. Mrs. Hamilton, the prosecutor began, please tell the court about the events leading up to the night of September 15th. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. It all started when Jacob handed me divorce papers. As I recounted our harrowing journey, from uncovering the family's corruption to the dramatic confrontation at the docks, I watched the jury's expressions shift from skepticism to shock, and finally to outrage. Olivia's eyes bored into me, her lips curled in a sneer, but I didn't falter. I owed it to Emma, to Jacob, to myself, to see this through. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. The prosecutor nodded, satisfied. No further questions, Your Honor. Olivia and William's lawyer stood, a smug smile on his face. "Mrs. Hamilton, isn't it true that you were desperate to adopt Emma, desperate enough to fabricate these outrageous claims?" I felt a surge of anger, but kept my voice steady. "I love Emma, that's true. But everything I've said is the truth. I have the scars to prove it." He pressed on, trying to discredit me, but I held firm. When he finally sat down defeated, I caught a glimpse of Emma in the gallery, her eyes shining with pride. The verdict came swiftly, guilty on all counts. As the judge read out the sentences, decades in prison for Olivia and William, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Outside the courthouse, Jacob pulled me into a tight embrace. "It's over," he whispered. "We did it." Emma ran to us, throwing her arms around our waists. "Does this mean I can stay with you now?" she asked, her voice small and hopeful. I looked at Jacob, then at Ava, who stood nearby. She nodded, a bittersweet smile on her face. "Emma needs stability," she said, "and I need time to heal, to become the mother she deserves." Tears welled in my eyes as I knelt to Emma's level. "If that's what you want, sweetheart, yes, you can stay with us." Her face lit up with joy, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. James took over the family business, vowing to run it ethically. Jacob and I renewed our vows in a small, intimate ceremony, with Emma as our flower girl. As we settled into our new life, I found myself reflecting on the tumultuous journey that had brought us here. One evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked, "Aunt Emily, are you happy now?" I smiled, stroking her hair. "I am, sweetheart. Are you?" She nodded, her eyes serious. "I used to think family was about blood, but it's not, is it? It's about love." Tears pricked my eyes. "That's exactly right, Emma. Family is about love and choices, and sometimes fighting for what's right." As I closed her door, I found Jacob waiting in the hallway. He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "You know," he said softly, "I always knew you'd be an amazing mother." I looked up at him, my heart full. "We're going to make mistakes, Jacob. This won't be easy." He chuckled. "When has anything in our life been easy? But we'll face it together, just like we always have." Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the twists and turns that had led us here. The pain, the betrayal, the moments of despair. They had all shaped us, made us stronger. I realized then that family isn't something you're born into or something you can force. It's something you build with love, trust, and sometimes a little bit of chaos. As I drifted off to sleep, Jacob's arm around me, in the knowledge that Emma slept peacefully down the hall, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had weathered the storm and emerged not just intact, but stronger, more united than ever. Our unconventional family might not be perfect, but it was ours, and that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.